Hey everybody, Jonathan Vellner here from Daring.life, a blog about pushing your limits and getting the most out of yourself and your life. Earlier this week, I had a chance to catch up with one of my younger brothers, Patrick Vellner. He's a CrossFit Games athlete and also a full-time student. So we had a little talk about how he's feeling coming into the games this year, how he prepares, what it takes to be a great competitor in this sport, his time managing strategies because he has to balance a full-time course load with training at an extremely high level. The topic of pressures from social media, the right and wrong ways of comparing yourself to others. He has some really good advice for people who are at the beginning of their journey into fitness, people who might just be starting out and want to get more fit. We also talk a bit about his hopes for the future and what the good life means to him. Let's take a look. Yeah, basically, we're going to do a little interview here. As you know, I write a blog, Daring.life. It's basically a blog about trying to get the most out of yourself and just improve your life in various ways. So for sure we touch on productivity, goal setting, things like that. I wanted to, well, basically just have a conversation with you about, for starters, what's going on in your life right now with the CrossFit Games coming up. So I'm going to give a little brief intro, or actually maybe I'll let you just introduce to people who wouldn't know you. A lot of people watching this will be some of your fans from CrossFit, but many people might not be in CrossFit. So you can just let people know a bit about who you are and what you're up to these days.
Sure. So I'm John's brother, Pat. Right now I'm studying to be a chiropractor. I have 2 more years left of school. I study full time, and I'm a CrossFit Games athlete. I finished third at the games last year in 2016, and I qualified again this year, heading back. And the games are in about 2 weeks from now. Competition starts on the 3rd of August. So, yeah, right now just mostly training. It's kind of nice this time of year. My semester's done, so it lines up pretty well with the competition year for me. So I have a little bit more free time. I have about 2.5 months off in the summer, right, and I can actually focus on training. So I ended up doing kind of as my summer job. I train for the CrossFit Games.
Nice. So one thing I'm really curious is how you're feeling coming into these games. Now, last time I spoke with you, you were saying that you are feeling in pretty good shape. Do you feel like you're better prepared than you were last time around?
It's always an interesting question because preparation depends on the test.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah.
Preparation is context dependent, and we don't know what the tests are going to be a lot of the time. So I'm broadly and generally, I'm in very good shape right now. But so is everybody else that's going to be there. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a cool year. They changed the location. I'm very interested to see how things run this year. It's going to be it's going to feel like a brand new competition. But
well, I guess
it's cool.
It is, right? Fun. Like it's totally new every year, isn't it?
Yeah, the events are all different. I mean, a lot of the athletes are different. But now this year, with a new venue and a new setup, it's going to be much, much different. And I think it's less days, I think, this year. It's a bit more packed together. It's a different climate. It's a very different competition altogether. So anyways, it'll be cool. It'll be an interesting experience, and I'm excited to see what comes with it. It's going to have a lot of challenges, and I'm sure things will not go smoothly the whole way through the weekend, but that's what we prepare for. So
yeah, like I guess that's one thing about CrossFit that you at least know for sure is that it's going to suck. So there's that constant.
Yeah, at some point, things are going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, it's going to be horrible. You'll hope for death, and then it'll eventually end, and hopefully you'll still be standing at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, nice. So I'm thinking back to there was a post that you put up a while back. Now I can't remember if it was at the close of the Open or at the end of regionals, and just basically talking about how relieved you were at how your performance went because of all the pressure that basically you've had on you since last year's games. Are you feeling a lot of pressure coming into these games because of the fact that you podiumed, or does it feel pretty much like business as usual?
You know what? That was at the end of regionals.
That was regionals. Okay, yeah.
And I think that the regionals is a very do or die test, and I think that the stakes are higher there than they are at the games almost, because anything can happen in the course of a competition, and particularly in a competition like the CrossFit Games, where they add a lot of elements that you maybe have never seen before.
Right.
Things can go poorly. One injury or one something early in the competition can really end things for you. So I think to just make it to the games is a massive accomplishment. So getting through regionals, because it narrows down from a massive field into 5, and then you make or break your season on that. So that's a pretty stressful.
It's true. It's
scenario.
An intense filter. Yeah, they.
So now that once you're qualified for the games, you can relax a little bit and play with some different stuff, because they're gonna throw something brand new at you.
Right.
You can play with some new elements and try to just enjoy your training a little bit more, challenge yourself in new ways. It almost becomes less like CrossFit-y. You do a lot more of just anything outdoors. Like, we've been doing a lot of cycling and swimming this year, because we've been warned basically that that's going to be in there.
So who's we when you say that? Do you have a team that you train with here, or you just mean in general athletes going to the games?
I think just in general the games athletes. I certainly have been, and I think that most people would have been. But yeah, I think there is certainly a pressure on me to perform again this year and finish near the top, and I'm confident that I will be able to.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's competition. It's not their whole thing is saying like the fittest on earth, but this is a competition, and you need to execute well at the right time,
mm-hmm.
and compete well.
Right.
Last year I competed very well. I don't think at the end of the competition that I was the 3rd fittest man in the world. I think that on any given day and any given event, a lot of those guys could beat me. But on those 5 days of competition last year, I was a better competitor. And so I think that to make it to the game, through the games, and finish well at the games, it's not just being fit, it's being a good competitor. You need to hit your list when it counts. You need to be fast when it counts. And I think that execution is massively important. So that's what it comes down to, is I have to show up and give myself every opportunity I can to succeed by being in as good a shape as possible.
Right.
But then it comes all like the hard part of actually putting those pieces together in the seconds that it matters, and then those times on the competition floor. So
right. So in a sense, at a big event like that, that's actually almost more important than your fitness. Would you say your tactics, the way that you, so that's fascinating. I hadn't even really thought about that much. It seems like you just want to be as strong as possible, and you just like grunt and bleed your way through it. But so I'm curious, what kind of stuff do you do then to
watch the best athletes? Yeah. They're the ones who grunt and bleed the least.
Right. I guess that's what you would want if you want to make it
but
to the end.
I don't think it's because they're not,
because they're stronger. It's not because
they're fitter necessarily or whatever. Like, people will have better strategies. They executed well. I think if you're grunting and breathing a little too much, you probably have done something wrong.
Right.
And you've yourself in a bad place. And the more effortless you can make it through technique and efficiency and strategy, the better off you're going to be, particularly across multiple days. When the last day, if you wake up and you feel great because you've been recovering well, you've been doing everything you needed to do, you're gonna succeed.
So this is really interesting to me, because I'm curious how do you go about, you got this big event coming up, you don't know necessarily, like you mentioned, what all the tests are going to be. How do you train that side of it? Or do you try? Like, do you have a strategy for trying to think about how you're going to be a good competitor and not just a good athlete at those games?
I think competition skills are practiced as well. So the more you have opportunities to compete with other people, the better you're going to be at competing. And I know, particularly in this world, everyone's got a very, you got to just put your best foot forward and do the best that you can do mentality, mm-hmm. which is true and is great, but you're being measured against your competitors, and as much as you can still be happy about your performance if you do well and you feel like you've done everything you could do. If I finished the competition and everything went, I felt like everything went as well as it could have possibly gone for me, and I finished in second place, I would still be a little bitter. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm trying
you would be measuring
to beat the other athletes, and I think that having a good competition awareness, knowing where their athletes are in the field plays a big role in that. Knowing when to push based on your strengths, when to hold back based on your weaknesses,
Right.
like that can all play a big role. You can't just attack every obstacle with 100% speed and maximum effort and try to plow through everything. It's just not really the way it works. And it is, I understand it's like a sport based around fitness where like it's effectively exercise racing, and it sort of seems counterintuitive because you want to just exercise the fastest.
Right.
But like smooth is fast, and athletes who understand pacing well and when to attack and when not to, well, generally those are guys you see catch someone in a sprint off in the last 20 meters of a workout and pick up an extra 5 points just because like this guy didn't see him coming or he didn't save enough for the last push. And those competition awareness skills play a big factor, and I think you get that just by doing it. You need to compete a lot. The more you have people in your gym that are a high level that you can compete with day in and day out, the more you have just signed up for events, and if you've competed at regionals or at the games before and you know what the atmosphere is like,
right,
that all plays a role, I think, for sure.
So okay, that's good. One thing I've heard people ask you a lot is about that you seem to be an athlete that compares yourself a lot to other people, which goes, I guess in a way, goes against the grain of like what people typically say you should do, or at the very least what people say out loud that they all do, which I know is always irritating. Like, yeah, people say that, but they're all full of shit. I'm just saying what I really do, which is I pay attention to the field I'm competing against. Why wouldn't I? I'm in a competition. So a lot of these strategies that you've come up with, are these things that you've sort of just developed on your own, or have you actively sought to in a way steal tactics and strategies and best practices and just techniques that you've seen to be effective in your competitors? Like, do you do that when you're competing? Like, look at that's working for this guy, I'm going to try that.
I think to a certain degree it does depend on the athlete. I think that some people I don't know if it's what you're good at what you practice or what, but I think that there are some athletes who, if they get caught watching a field, they'll push too hard at the wrong times, or they'll make poor decisions because they have to be focused on their own game plan. So I don't think it's something that works for everyone.
Right.
But I think that there is anybody who's doing this, or if you're a highly competitive person, there's something innate in you that drives you to try to beat someone or to not get left behind. And right. I think I sort of try to channel that as much as I can in events where you're and again, it depends on what particularly you're doing, but if there's areas where it's just you just need guts, like I use that. Like you want to try to stand in someone's shorts and stay right with them for as long as you can, if nothing for no other reason than just to annoy them until you get to something that you're better at. But it's I don't think it's something that, like, again, it's not something maybe that everyone else can do. Like, everyone can do based on their own mentality, but it's certainly, I've seen some competitors do it quite well. Like Matt Fraser is a guy that does that a lot.
Well, here I wasn't really talking so much about, in real time, you're out there, you're throwing weights around and you're paying attention to people and trying to change your strategy on the fly. I think that is probably a bad strategy for most people. But I was curious if, like, in the years that you've been competing, if you actively seek to change your technique or the way that you train or the way that you basically do your phasing in your programs based on the way that people do it around you, or if you are completely you just really focus on yourself and what feels right to you and completely don't worry about what other people are doing. Here, I don't mean comparing yourself to their results, but I mean comparing what you're doing with what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think you can't, because people have different backgrounds.
Right.
So, to compare myself all the time to, like, my weightlifting to a bunch of weightlifters is kind of an exercise in futility. Like, you're going to feel like you suck all the time.
Right.
It is beneficial in a way that those are all guys that I'm competing against. So, if I need to get my strength numbers to a point where I'm relevant or I'm actually competitive in that field, then that's good. I need to know where the mark is in the field, like in the men's field, so that I know what's acceptable.
Right. What's good, what's bad. Yeah. If you train by yourself.
But yeah, I think at a certain point you periodize your training based on competition schedule, and I think you should be anyways. I don't know. I think most athletes do. This time of year, training for the games, there's less strength bias and more capacity bias, just like running and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to just build your capacity in odd object work and running and biking and swimming and just like endurance, because that's what it's going to be, is a lot of grunt work. Whereas in the off season, sort of after the games, maybe September to December, you can just do a strength cycles and try to get stronger and then mold that strength during the year.
Okay. And I guess, like you were mentioning, it really depends. People train differently depending on their backgrounds, but also probably depending on their life and what their constraints are. Like you, for example, obviously are going to have different time constraints than other people just because of the fact that you are a full-time student. I mean, you're not at the moment, which you said you're taking advantage of and having a lot more time to focus on your training. But when you're during your school season, then I'm sure you must modify your training program quite a bit. One thing I'm always fascinated with, how much stuff you manage to fit in a day. And I think just from looking around on social media, it looks like a lot of people ask you that question a lot. What you do to balance these two things, which both take up a lot of time, like full-time student and full-time elite CrossFit competitor. So how do you do that?
With great difficulty a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think it's not something that's easy, and I don't think it necessarily should be easy or ever will be easy.
Right.
It's just, it's what you commit to. Like, you make time for things that you love or that you want. So I'm committed to my field and studying to be a chiropractor, and I want that as a career when I'm all is said and done, regardless of what happens in my CrossFit career. That's my plan for the next 40 years of work. Mm-hmm. This CrossFit has been amazing, and it's an awesome ride, and it's thrilling that I'm able to do it at the level I am. Mm-hmm. But it's fairly transient in the scheme of my life.
Yeah, like you're pretty sure you're not going to do it when you're 70. Kind of
thing. I don't see myself being a masters athlete. We'll see, I suppose. Maybe I'll take a hiatus and I'll come back for the 60 plus crown.
Come back out of retirement and just dummy everybody.
But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Matt will come back when he's 60 plus too, and he'll just win that too.
That would be an incredible Clash of Titans. I would love to see that.
But it's
So I think more what I'm asking here isn't just how do you justify it? Like, how do you justify the struggle? If it's two things you love, I mean, I understand. You got to make time for it. It's one of those things that, of course, it's hard, but you asked for it. But what I really am curious about is literally, how do you do it? Like what does your day look like? What what do you do in terms of fitting things into your day and being effective to make it all happen without everything just falling apart? Because I try to get done half the stuff that you do, and I always feel stressed out about I don't have enough time to do this or whatever. So then I look at that and I think, man, if I was training this many hours and I had a full course load and still wanted to have a social life, or then how would I do that? And so I think a lot of people would like to know that, because it would help them also, or maybe it's very personal, I don't know, but I am curious in either case how you do it.
I think it is a bit personal, and depends on how forgiving your schedules are in both directions. Mm-hmm. Let's say for me, school and training wise.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate the gym that I train at, I don't coach there or anything like that. I pretty much am just training and doing school. But they're super accommodating. I can come in and I'll do some classes there, especially in the earlier parts of the season where training's not as picked up. Right. I'll just train. I frankly just train less. I try to train an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, okay. 2 hours max.
That's when you say a day, that's 7 days a week, or you take days off too?
That's five days of that. I'll have one day that I might just go swim for an hour, not even. And then one day I take fully off.
Right.
During that time, early on, I might do certain days where I do 2 sessions of about an hour where I'm weightlifting fully for basically both sessions, just trying to get stronger. So anyways, it's kind of nice. Again, post-secondary school is also fairly forgiving in the sense that a lot of my lectures, I'm responsible for all the information. I need to know it, but I don't
Right.
necessarily have to be at the lecture. There'll be a professor there lecturing. A lot of people learn well taking notes, being in a lecture hall. I've been in school for a long time now, and I found a long time ago that if I'm in those lectures of 2 hours, I'm going to fool around on the computer, and I'm going to be listening for like 10 minutes, lose my focus, then I'm going to be on Facebook,
Right. That would be me. That would be me too. I think a lot of people, yeah.
So I just found that those lectures I don't need to physically be at. There's no penalty for me not being there. I just need to learn the information on my own time.
Right. However you do it.
So nowadays, where all of our resources are online, I can get up, go to the gym, say for an hour in the morning. Let's say it's like a 2 hour or a double day session, where I'll go in, like maybe warm up, train for an hour at the school gym, just weightlift, go to the library, or go home maybe, read the morning's lectures. I can usually read through the material in half the time maybe of the actual lecture. So I save some time, and then I can go and train an afternoon session of like conditioning, go to a group class or something, and then come back at night and do whatever. There's labs that I have to go to at school where you just you do have to go to like your anatomy labs or things like that, technique labs. And so I go to all the mandatory classes, but anything that's not mandatory, I frankly just don't go to. I learn on my own. I use a lot of resources. Like YouTube is an awesome resource to learn, honestly, anything.
It is. I know.
Like the internet is a brilliant place. You can find a lot of really simplified ways to learn a lot of things on the internet. So I use a lot of resources at my disposal. I have great roommates to help me out if I'm needing things or I'm stuck. So I mostly am doing that. I try to things like my nutrition. I work with a nutritionist that basically just tells me what to do. It's less important in certain months of the year, but this time of year, I don't think about what I'm doing for that. I don't spend time planning or anything like that. It's already done for me. I just have to prep it, eat it.
Right.
I don't program for myself, so all of that's taken off my plate. I don't take hours of the day trying to figure out what I'm going to do for the next 2-3 months of training.
Right.
It's just already done. I just have to show up. I try not to take up brain space or time with things that I don't need to be doing, and it saves up a lot of the time so that I can just walk from one piece to another, walk from one place to another, and just execute.
Right.
And even I find it's not even very stressful, just because the training is almost stress relieving to go out and people talk about endorphin highs and feeling great after you do a workout. So if I go sit and study for a while, and I'm not a kind of guy who can sit for a long period anyways and work for a long period at a time. So like maybe I scrape out 2 hours of reading, and then I'll go to the gym, do 2 hours of training or an hour and a half of training, and just like feel awesome.
Right.
Come home, do another hour like right away. I don't need a break between those. Like that is a break. It's like a break for your brain, and then I'll train my body, then I'll train my brain kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
And
So far from taking away time, it's actually like there's like a synergy there where it actually just gives you the energy that you need to bring back to your studies.
Yeah, I find it's revitalizing in a way. Like it makes you can come back and be more focused.
Yeah.
Everyone's had that where you're reading
something.
I
buy that. Yeah, I mean, I feel that
you read
also.
the same paragraph 5-6 times and you still don't know what the hell it said.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what language am I reading?
Yeah, and then it's about that time I got to stand up and get going. And
makes sense.
Go move around for a while, and then you come back and you can just be effective. So it's all about being effective with your time, whereas a lot of people, I find, particularly in the context of school, you see a lot of people who do things like that. Maybe they'll go to the library and you see them 6 hours later, and they'll tell you about how they're at the library for 6 hours, but nobody learns 6 hours of material in a 6-hour stint at the library.
No, that's for sure.
So if they come back and they can tell me like 5 things they learned, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, I mean, even like,
I think people go and waste a lot of time and then talk about how much time they spent at a place, but they didn't do anything. So it's like same thing. I could go to the gym and spend 4 hours at the gym and not do anything.
Right.
But
so in a way,
if I only have 2 hours today to dedicate to the gym, and I know that I'm trying to train to be a CrossFit Games athlete, like my 2 hours are going to look very different than somebody else who's there. Like I'm really trying to maximize my time and get the hell out of there.
Right.
So anyways,
I like what you just said there, like that you go to the gym and you know that you're trying to train to be a CrossFit Games athlete. Is that do you try to keep that in your mind all the time when you're training? Like you bring it up often and to motivate yourself? Do
Not
you have
sure
to?
how
Is it? I
often.
mean,
I
people
caught
probably
myself
remind
doing
you of it
it
anyways,
though.
but
What's that? Sorry.
well, I was just saying, you know, maybe you don't need to bring it up. Maybe it's brought up to your attention often enough as it is. But yeah, I'm curious. Like that. No, that's a really good point. I mean, training with intention. I think a lot of people set goals and spend time thinking about their goals. They actually do that step, but then it becomes a thing that goes on the shelf, and they don't let it into their head very often. And that seems like, I mean, it's not very useful to have a goal if it doesn't sit there in your head and cause you to act. So, you know, I was wondering, if that's the thing that you deliberately bring up to yourself to make yourself train harder, or it just kind of you just you just
Yeah,
train
I
and you
think
happen to know
like
that you're
I'm
at that level.
I don't know how often I like consciously would think it, say in the middle of a workout or a training, but there's days where you don't really want to train, or there's days
Yeah.
where you don't feel good and things aren't going well, and sometimes it doesn't hurt to have that reminder. Like this is like it's like kind of a job for me right now, and that's
Right.
how I look at it. For certain periods, you're just kind of like this is what I'm doing, and it doesn't matter if you don't feel like showing up today. Like you show up and you put your work in and you
Right.
do what you're supposed to do. And maybe it wasn't great today, but tomorrow might be better. Like, and you just have to continue to take steps forward. You do have to obviously listen to your body and dial things back when you need to, but I think just showing up and making sure that you get in and you put some work in, even if you just dial back your percentages or your volume or whatever,
Yeah.
it's a good
Better than
reminder
doing
to
nothing. Yeah.
keep coming and doing it. And I'm a consumer of CrossFit as well. Like it is around me all the time. And like my social media is a constant reminder of like what everybody else is doing and where
Right.
I need to try to be at and how I need to try to improve. But like I said, I have people helping me with my programming, and I try to just show up and do what I'm told, and leave, and just leave it at the gym, and then I like once it's done, and you show up tomorrow, and if try to leave no doubt that you did everything you could have that day for that period of time, and then like there's no sense. I try not to think about training all day when I'm at school, you know what I
Right.
mean, or vice versa. Like try not to carry that baggage everywhere.
Right. So wherever you're at, if you're studying, it's study time.
Yeah,
If you're at the gym,
try to
it's gym
study.
time.
So again, it comes back to just like effective use.
Yeah, going back to that effective use, and before we get too far away from the productivity we were talking about there, I want to see if I understand if I could boil down what you're saying into a couple little things. It sounds like what you do to be most effective is you take frequent breaks. You don't let yourself hit a plateau where you just stop getting things done. So you basically you monitor yourself and recognize when you start to be ineffective, and then change your attention to a task that
Change
you
your
could be more.
scenery. Like it's not
Yeah.
necessarily taking a break, but
No,
take a break
it's
from
just
whatever you're
maybe
doing.
yeah,
Right?
changing the task that you're
Yeah.
trying to focus on. So in a
So
sense, it
it's
is
like
a break.
it's like you're using a different system, and you
Right.
kind of just you're like your levels go down in one, and then you can continue to balance by doing the flip flopping back and forth between activities.
Right. So yeah. So frequently changing, you know, I guess not necessarily your physical space, but at least what you're doing, so that you can stay alert and actually giving your focus. You mentioned delegating a lot of work. The things that you don't feel you need to be doing yourself, that there'd just be an unnecessary burden on you. You find ways to delegate those off to other people. I think that's a great strategy. And the other thing, it seemed like just thinking outside the box as far as scheduling is concerned, like finding ways that your schedule can be flexible and fitting things in time slots that aren't necessarily made for that, but work for that. Like, yeah, it's that I think is a really good reminder too for everyone to remember that like your day doesn't have to look at a specific way like everyone else's day. You can just think about what works for you and your particular goals. Fit things in where they fit. Switch things up when you start to feel ineffective, and delegate work that you can, if you can. And then the other thing was you mentioned using resources, all the resources available to you. For example, like maybe your instructor doesn't tell you to look it up on YouTube, but you still can, or you can still ask your neighbor who is say in your case, if you know somebody who's a chiropractor and you're working in chiropractic, maybe you can ask this person. In your case, maybe it's your roommates or whatever. Like, so I think that's a good thing too, that people remember to use all sorts of resources, not just the ones that were necessarily given to them for a task. And yeah, chunk work. Actually, that's the question I was wondering about you. Like you mentioned, your nutritionist gives you whatever, a bunch of planning. Do you meal prep like one time for the whole week, or do you do it in short little bursts all the time?
I might cook enough for like 3 or 4 days, and I'll usually make bundles of certain things. Like if I need to just like steam a bunch of veggies to have on hand, or like cook a bunch of rice to have on hand for lunches, like I can cook a massive pot of rice every like 3 days,
Right.
and then crush it over the course of the next 3 days. Then just cook another pot of rice that next day. Good days for me, because I generally have a lower volume kind of like active recovery day and then a full day off. Those are the easiest days to prep on.
Right.
And you just try to cook. I'll maybe cook a bunch of chicken one day, and then I'll just slowly work my way through that. And then, but yeah, usually it's not for a full week.
Right.
But I found I can pretty easily, like in 30 minutes, cook enough for the next 3 days. And then I'll like eat that meal, take all the leftovers, pack them up, and I have stuff for the next few days.
Yeah,
and then every morning when I'm getting ready for the day, if I need to take 2 meals with me, I'll just make up 2 Tupperwares quick and bring them out.
Right.
And it works pretty well.
Yeah, I like that strategy. I've actually, I need to get back into that. When I used to be on the ski team, I always did that and found it was so effective. And I don't know why I don't do that anymore, because it's true. It saves you so much time. Actually, that's a good reminder for me. Thank you for that. But
yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah. You mentioned a bit about social media as a constant reminder to you, obviously, that you're in CrossFit and that, you're a competitor, because you're always seeing what people are doing. That reminds me of that post that I was talking about earlier, even that imposter syndrome post that you put up at the end of regionals, just about how much we can get involved in analyzing people's lives and their achievements on social media, and the kind of pressure that puts on people. So yeah, I'm just curious if you want to just like elaborate a little bit about like how that's affected you as you go into these games, like just seeing where other people are at on social media and all that.
I don't know, like the pressures are real, and like it's particularly in CrossFit, it's a very social media driven world. I think all of the media effectively is social media, so it's sort of an expectation that the athletes build their own brands by putting their own stuff out there, and the CrossFit Games sort of perpetuates that as well. Mm-hmm. But it's hard because it's everything you see, and like it's a highlight reel. It's everybody's highlight reel. Nobody puts videos of themselves sucking on Instagram. And you put all the sexiest videos up, and either way, you see what certain people are capable of. And I mean, I found in general in competing, when I come into a competition, I generally overestimate the field.
Right.
Based on stuff like that. I don't train with these guys very often. You'll see like the odd highlight clip of some stuff they've been doing, and people are impressive, like super impressive. Mm-hmm. And I'll see a bunch of stuff that people do and think there's no way I could ever do that. But the reality of the matter is there's no way I could do that until someone puts in a competition and says go, and like I will fucking do it.
Right.
So
whatever it is,
it's funny. You sort of I tend to overestimate a field, and then over the course of the first few or something, like at regionals, by the end of day 1, partway through day 2, I felt much more comfortable. The first event, you're always a bit jittery, and then the second event wasn't a great one for me, I thought, that year, just because it was a fast, high power output one. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of day 3, sort of, we're halfway through the competition, or partway through day 3, and I had yet to really stumble, and you're kind of, now I felt like, okay, I belong there. Like I'm not, everyone's still super impressive, but I'm just also pretty impressive, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think it's much easier to see everyone else's highlights and say like, holy crap, be very impressed with them. And particularly as an athlete who's constantly trying to self-improve, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get better at everything. So I think by nature of that, you're always looking at what you're worst at
Right.
So you might be, I'm someone who struggles with like heavier weights, and also I see everybody putting up the heaviest weights possible on their social medias, and
Right.
I see that and I'm like, oh man, how am I ever going to compete with that? But the reality is, when we go to compete, like that's not a very big factor, or very rarely is it. So I think it's easy to see where you're coming up short and not where you're going long, and you're hitting the long drive, and you're like, man,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just that's not what you do. You constantly look at what you suck at and you try to get better at it. So I think that's partly in this competition world in CrossFit where it's a bit of a trap for people, is that you're your own worst enemy, and you're your own harshest critic, and you
Mm-hmm.
should be, because I think it's going to make you a better athlete,
Right.
as long as you don't get lost in a downward spiral of being like, well, I'm never going to be able to make it, so what's the point, right? And
Yeah,
if
there's
you can
definitely a thin
still,
line there. Yeah, I think I agree with you that actually self-doubt and self-criticism are really really good things, because if you just believe, I mean, actually everybody knows somebody who just like is shit at something but won't get better because they don't believe it. They think they're the best.
yeah,
And you can't get better at something if you already think you're the best. So to some extent, like you have to, even at an elite level, you have to look at yourself sometimes and be like, I could have done better there. I tripped up here. I messed that thing up, and I can do that better in the future. Where I think it's a problem is only when people start to where the doubt causes people to stop taking chances. For example, if you're talking about coming into a competition, overestimating the field, but you still competed. I think where it really hurts people is if they don't sign up, or they
yeah,
don't go to do a thing because of self-doubt. That's where it starts to become a crippling thing, because as you mentioned, when you get out in the real world, you can also have those experiences that dispel that illusion. You can see, like, oh, this guy that you're competing against that you thought was Goliath, after 2, 3, 4 events, you realize, oh wait, no, things are fine. I belong here, and I think that would happen to more people if they really get out in the real world. And of course, it will also happen that sometimes you just get completely thrashed by the competition, because
yeah.
sometimes you really just aren't as good as them.
Arguably you learn more from
And
that.
yeah, I agree. It is really a good learning experience, as long as people always remember to look at it like, okay, what's just been exposed to me is some of my weaknesses, which are things that I can control and improve. But if you
Yeah,
look at it like, oh, what this was proof positive that I'm a useless piece of shit, and then like, no, that's not very productive way to
yeah, and
think.
like,
So
and it's just it's okay to not be the best, right? So
yeah,
when
that's
you look
true.
at something, particularly in again, like what we're doing
Mhm.
in an area where there's multifacets, you don't have to be the best at everything, but like
Right,
it's okay to recognize, and it's actually important to recognize areas that you're not the best at, recognize that there's room for improvement and growth, and see
right.
maybe what other people are doing and how they're doing better at it, and you can try to maybe steal from them or learn the ways that they're being better than you at those things, and
Right. Yeah, this is
I
where
think
I think
that's just how you get better.
that comparing yourself to others can actually be a really good thing. Again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. When you
Yeah,
compare yourself to people's achievements and neglect the context that those achievements come out of, then you might just discourage yourself. But I think when people compare themselves to others, but especially that last thing you said, when they recognize a weakness in themselves, seek out a person who's better than them at that, and then start paying attention to the things that they do that make them good at it. That's good comparing. That's really really smart comparing. Like if you do that often, then you'll end up getting so much stronger at whatever it happens to be, whether it's you're studying, or in your case working out. In my case, it might be artistic things, like not even necessarily to be a better acrobat, but maybe a better dancer, or or better at doing my makeup at night, or whatever.
yeah, anything. It can be like a personality
Right.
thing too. You
Yeah.
can see like, oh, this person always seems really happy. Like I feel like
Right. Yeah.
or like you
Yeah.
can always
Social things. That's
find it.
true.
It's completely applicable in all areas of life. You can find things that you want to change in yourself, and you have to work at them, obviously. But find someone who does that awesome, like super well, and then go from there. Try to figure out what it is that they do that makes them more charismatic, makes them more
Hmm.
whatever, and then you never know.
Yeah, right. Huh. Now I'm just wondering. I haven't been looking at the time, so I don't know how much of your day I've just stolen here.
That's all right.
But I know I've got at the same time. Yeah, I feel like we could just talk forever about a lot of these things. Well, one thing, you know what? Here's something that I think is important to touch on because interviews with star athletes or people who are really competing at a very very high. Yeah, I see you smiling like, oh, don't call me star athlete. But no, I mean the truth
Superstar.
is superstar. The truth is that you're competing at a very 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 high level. Like I mean the highest level in the sport that you're doing. So whenever you get an athlete in that position and people ask them about sports, I find the conversation always revolves around competing at that high level, which is what we've mostly been talking about here too. And so I would actually like to ask you a little bit about if you have some advice for people who, a lot of people just want to get in shape. A lot of people. In fact, it's probably one of the most common goals that people set for themselves. Like maybe they want to lose weight or maybe they want to just like pick up a sport or whatever, just like feel better. Yeah, I'm curious. Like obviously that kind of training will be very different than what you do. But if you have anything that you'd say to people who are just at the beginning, the very, very beginning of their kind of journey into fitness.
Like the most important thing for getting in shape is like compliance. You if you're not gonna do it, you need to find something that you like doing. If you're not gonna do it, it's not gonna work.
Right.
Like I don't care if it's the hardest, best exercise regime there is. Like you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so it needs to mesh well with your lifestyle, your goals. Like you need to have times in the day where you can do this. You need to like it just needs to work with your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like a peer system is always great because if you go with friends or you sort of keep each other accountable for going or not, and that's why just like anything, the people who play recreational sports or find some sort of a group class or like a run club or anything where there's some sort of a sense of community. And I mean CrossFit's built a huge identity and community, and I think they've got great compliance rates as a result of that.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I think anything that if you and your buddies sign up and you play softball or you do something and you play like 2 days a week and you're always going to go because it's also a social experience for you. Yeah. And you get to go and have fun, and it's not like work. Like you go and you have fun and it becomes part of the social part of your day. I think that's super important because you're going to go because you really enjoy it, and it's not even about the workout anymore. It's like you see your friends there and you see people that you chat with and you catch up with, and then the next thing you know, an hour flies by and you're out of your spin class or whatever it was, and you're done with your day. So right. I think like that's like step one, in my opinion, is just like find something that you actually like and find some people who also like it, and then just go with each other, like keep each other accountable.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And you know what? I think that's really good advice that applies outside of working out. I mean, other things that people often want to learn. It's maybe, I know tons of people who want to learn guitar. And I think about the way that some people might try to learn guitar. Like you could sit alone in your house drilling chords and you'll drive yourself crazy and you won't enjoy it. Or you can get out with friends and jam, or like go check out some open mics and like practice a song because you want to try it at an open mic and you'll be embarrassed, but you go with all your buddies and have a couple beers and then it's fun, and like, yeah, that would work. Or if you want to learn a new language, people could spend hours and hours and hours just like trying to do it alone on their iPhone instead of just, like doing it with some friends or like meeting friends who speak that language and trying to use it, in a social context. I think, adding that social element to anything that you want to do immediately makes it more enjoyable on its own. It makes you want to seek it out, and also makes you notice when you don't do it, because there's somebody to text you later and be like, hey, we didn't see you at practice or whatever. Like, that's excellent advice. So basically, you want to get in shape, just go have fun, do something that you enjoy, find some people you like doing it with, and go do it often, and then
like it's fun to learn new stuff and challenge yourself with that. But like the jumping off point is just like grab a couple of friends and go do something active that you like.
Mm-hmm. I think That's an excellent answer. That's yeah, that's perfect. I totally endorse that answer.
There you go.
I think, yeah, you know what? I think we covered a lot of ground here and touched on quite a few different things. One thing that I definitely want to touch on to wrap this up is the idea of a good life, what it is, how a person can try to even go about defining it, pursuing it. My blog is about that pursuit. It's about, basically finding ways to just get more enjoyment out of life, also more achievement in your life, and basically get more from yourself. And so I'd like to ask you if you have a definition of what the good life is, if you've given that some thought, what you aspire to, what for you is a good life, and how do you go about pursuing that?
Like related to just like to work or just to...
You know what? However you see. I mean, everyone has, I suppose, different priorities. For me, I'm talking about here, I mean life as a whole. So
Right.
I admit that it's a very difficult question to answer, especially when it's so vague in how it's...
For me,
Yeah.
A good life is a life in which I work in a way that provides me freedom of time and of finances
Right.
to pursue other things as well and challenge myself regularly. I think that's something that's really important to me, is to be able to stimulate myself and challenge myself with something new and give myself the opportunity to have success in new areas
Right.
all the time. And like not necessarily success that comes easy, but even like you said, something like learning an instrument or whatever. If I'm able to set myself up in a way that I have time to take on new challenges later in my life, I think that that's a good life.
Right.
I'm not necessarily buried in work, and I have time to spend traveling, spend time with family, learn new things, just expose yourself to a lot of new things. I think ideally the way I would get there, I'm going to try to compete in the next few years, hopefully stay in the top end of the CrossFit Games world until I graduate, another year after I graduate, maybe two. Parlay some of that success and use my name and brand of CrossFit to generate client base as a chiropractor,
Mm-hmm.
where I can treat patients who are active and athletic, and maybe there's such a big physio and chiro and bodywork world that surrounds the CrossFit world that I think I can generate a lot of practice that way.
Yes.
So if I can build a practice somewhere in affiliation with some gyms, maybe in the long term, like I said, work only part-time, maybe like half days or only like certain days of the week, and then have that extra time to do whatever I want to do.
Nice. I think you're very smart to want to leverage what's working for you really well right now, moving into the future, and just use that as a jumping off point. I really liked from your answer. That's interesting. I almost expected you to say more about chiropractic, but it's interesting that you didn't, because that tells me that maybe for you the priority is that the work is a thing that you've followed it because it is your passion and you love it, but not as much as you love the pursuit of a challenge, whatever the challenge is. Like the thing that you focused on was that nameless challenge. You don't even know what it is, but having the freedom to pursue challenges continuously in your life, that sounds to me like what you're after.
Yeah, I think
that's a really great definition. Yeah.
Do you want to work? Do you want to live to work, or do you want to work to live? Kind of thing, right? So I do love chiropractic, and I'm passionate about that pursuit of health and wellness and rehabilitation and what that can do for people. But for me, like, that's going to be my job, and I want to be able to work as much as I need to help people and do whatever, and then have time to do other things for myself.
Right.
And be free to pursue other things and enjoy my life with whatever. I don't know what, like I said, what kind of challenges I'm going to be looking to take on at whatever age.
But you know that you're going to want something that stimulates you.
But I'm sure I'm going to want something. Like I feel pretty empty if I'm not working towards something. So, and maybe at a certain point it will be to like build up a clinic and sell it, or start a chain of rehabilitation clinics, or I don't know. Like it could end up being something very work related, but it doesn't.
But it might be completely not. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I think that is a great definition. And I asked that question because I like most people, I think I am asking myself that question often enough, and getting different answers different times that I ask it. So I think it's always interesting to me to find out what other people, how other people are tackling that question, because I think that's an important one that all of us need to think about. Maybe more often than we do. That this is our lives, right? We got to steer it in the direction that we want. Thank you so much, Pat, for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day off, and all the best to you, especially in these next crucial 2 weeks as you get ready for the games. I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be a huge test. I watched a few days of it last year, and it is grueling. So anyways, I will be thinking of you and definitely cheering you on.
I appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy, buddy.
Take care, man. We'll be in touch.